Valerie Lockhart. I'm the executive director of the Minnesota Tech Network, mtn.org. And this is our first in a series of some kind of art salon type discussions with creative AI multimedia artists. And the first person that we're speaking with today is Steph Gornick. And I am going to let Steph kind of introduce herself and kick us off, and we can dive into processes and tools and all the fun stuff. So thank you all for being here, and I'll hand it over to you, Steph.
Yeah, thanks everyone for being here. I appreciate it. My name's Steph Gornick. I'm a multidisciplinary creator from lens to latent space. You can find me at stephaniegornick.com. Also, I'm on LinkedIn if you want to find me there. I post often. And then I'm on Discord. You can find me at Calgon Take Me Away. So I just wanted to start out by saying that AI is an open source technology. It's freely available for anybody to use. You can view it, use it, modify it, share it. Many open source models can be downloaded and run locally on your own computer without paying for a subscription. However, they do require an initial investment into the right hardware. For example, on my own current setup, I can comfortably run an 8 billion parameter large language model, but something like ChatGPT 5.0 would require a much larger than that. So I would need to upgrade my hardware if I wanted to run it locally. But communities such as like GitHub, Hugging Face, Think Diffusion, Run Comfy, Civita, Discord, they host versions online, so you can experiment in a web browser without setting up any complex software. And so it's great to understand the open source aspect of it, to really understand like how these new platforms that are coming out, or how these new technologies are being integrated. For example, like Adobe software, they integrate the same open source AI tools into their own platform. They just make it user friendly with some buttons. So it's good to dive into the community, kind of understand the back end, so you can really understand the platforms and the tools that are coming out and decide which ones are best for you.
Can I ask one question, Steph, before you move on?
Yeah.
How techy do you have to be to install and run an AI model on your own server? Like, is it a high curve of learning, or is it pretty
I think there's
doable?
like a level of patience that that requires somebody to go through the steps. It can get a little technical depending on where you're at. So if you're on GitHub and you're like, whoa, this is really technical, you can always go to YouTube, and I'm 100% sure somebody's made a video on how to do it and will walk you through it. So it's just, and then also understanding, again, going back to what the setup can handle and comfortably run. So you need to understand like the model requirements as well. And so if you're installing Comfy UI on your PC, you need to understand like the additional nodes and the impact on the nodes on your setup as well. So just kind of understanding the back end part of it, but it's all available. People talk about it. There's communities. People are willing to ask questions. So it may seem daunting at first, but it's worth diving into because there's a lot of people that will help you guide you through it. So
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, so how did my AI journey start? I was in a place where my mental health was weighing heavy and I felt unseen and unheard. And these were the words I typed into Midjourney, not to make art, but to describe exactly how I felt in that moment. And so it's wind in chest, feeling tight, can't speak, head tilted down, feeling anxious, foggy vision, monochromatic view, sun on skin, late morning, loud noise to my left, passing hum, smell of grass. And so when I saw this, I felt an immediate sense of validation and recognition because AI had mirrored my own internal world back to me. And for the first time, I saw endless creative possibilities. This wasn't replacing my voice, this was helping me find it. And so that moment really began my journey from lens to latent space and redefined what's possible for me as an artist. And then a little background, my more traditional background, I'm a multidisciplinary creator. I'm skilled in traditional video pipeline, taking a project from initial concept with the client through execution and final deliverables. I have a strong foundation in sound, lighting, motion graphic design, lifestyle and product, film and photography, and the Adobe Creative Suite. And so here's how my traditional craft naturally evolved into an AI enhanced workflow. Curiosity led me to experimenting with AI alongside traditional tools. I broke down my traditional creative process into buckets and steps and set goals. And then I trained large language models to build efficiencies in my workflows. And so by breaking down my traditional creative process, I found opportunities to utilize the technology at each stage of the process. Therefore, enhancing strategic ideation with large language models, accelerating asset development through image and video AI. I was able to streamline production design and consistent AI generation and build reusable templates and smart workflows for future projects. And then also streamline handoffs with AI generated visuals and references. So even in the pre-production part of things. So you're using like, so I was utilizing AI at the beginning of the in content strategy all the way through post and deliverables. So that's kind of how I approached AI. I broke it down. Here's my process. Now, how can I leverage these tools within my process to maybe make things easier or more efficient, but also just have fun too. I just like to see what happens when you put stuff in AI. It's just like, what's weird things gonna happen?
What would you say is the biggest benefit that you have found from integrating AI into your processes? Like, is it time saving or are there other things that may be more surprising?
I think there are some time saving things. And I'll get into that with the large language models. There are some time saving things, but there's just surprises that happen and like you don't even think about that or like, oh hey, can I do that? Can I do this in AI? And so you're just so it's more of like the creative process for me. And so kind of shoring up like the more of the admin stuff, the more of like the iteration part of it, and then allowing me to like spend some time on the creative process.
I love that. You're letting the robots do the robot work.
Right, yeah. So large language models I wanted to touch on. So I didn't so by establishing a structured large language model environment where distinct AI personas are assigned specific roles and responsibilities, significantly enhanced my collaboration and efficiency and output quality across a project by aligning each persona to define a task or workflow. I created more of an intelligent, content aware system that functions like a high performing team. And it accelerated um, execution on these tasks and it maintained clarity and accountability. So that was really helpful in training the large language models and creating this ecosystem. I think one of the most crucial challenges in training large language models is determining what qualifies as a valuable data set. And it's not always about volume, it's about ensuring the data is clean, it's relevant, and it's strategically aligned without intended outcomes. And so basically, how I would approach um, setting up or how would I approach like data and determining what the data is. I went through the process of cleaning and autonomizing the data, transforming it into a generic format to eliminate any identifying information. I made sure nothing sensitive or private slipped through the cracks. I used information that was already publicly available, which ensured everything stayed compliant and transparent. And then equally important was developing a clear strategy for how the data was going to be prepared and leveraged, not only to drive performance, but to minimize bias. And, when I first started working with large language models, I did put the whole kitchen sink in there. And what I found out was that it was a lot of less control. And how I like to approach AI as a collaborative partner. And so, by giving the large language model the basic amount of data, I'm in creative control of like how I want to approach the project. And so it's my ideas, my storytelling, but the AI is using this format of information to help develop that. So, yeah, I think,
Yeah,
sure.
I have a question about
Yeah.
working with your clients with this. So,
Mhm,
obviously not wanting to put proprietary information in, and like,
mhm.
how have you reached that subject with your clients? Has there been like, is it an upfront discussion? Is it something that you kind of have to coach them on?
Yeah, you do have to have an upfront discussion, a very transparent discussion, and you have to understand like the copyright, privacy policies, data and security policies of all of these platforms because there are, like, for instance, ChatGPT. If you have a certain paid version, if you go into the settings, you can turn off training the model. You can make the model safer for you to work with. Um, and then also too, like, what are the goals for using AI in a project? And not all projects require AI, and not all um, not all projects require AI. And then also too, what you want to think about the talent, and you also want to think about the resources that you're using. And so you want to make sure that those are legitimate resources that you're putting into AI. And I'll show you later in this demo here, but um, you want to source your own content and put that in there to create your own stuff. And you want to set the right contracts with talent to make sure that they're getting paid, as well as, you're protecting yourself in this AI space. So there's a lot of navigating, and there's a lot of like understanding the ethics and legalities of it. Cool.
It's a whole new world that we're
It is.
navigating.
It is. Okay, so AI has extended my storytelling range. It has not replaced it. My eye, my taste, my ethics still drive the work. And in developing my approach, I focused on, for image generation, um, I focused on structuring the prompt in a modular way. So allowing for efficient variation in expression and poses while maintaining consistency in location and style and wardrobe. Additionally, incorporating specific facial and hair descriptors into the prompt proved highly effective, particularly in guiding like LoRa models to produce more accurate, consistent results. Ultimately, like the success in the process came down to controlling the right variables, prioritizing consistent, repeatable details to maintain visual fidelity throughout the generational pipeline. So just quickly here I used the LoRa model in this instance. And, if you want to take a look at the bottom left, that is in Comfy UI. I did a inpainting workflow where I needed to create a first and last frame for video generation, and I'll touch on that in the demo. But I had to remove her arm because her arm was up. She was doing something weird with her arm, but I removed it, because it was a good shot and I wanted to use that shot. So I used a inpainting workflow to remove her arm and then use that as a frame. Also, too, if I wanted to change her expression, there's an expression editor in Comfy UI. So if I wanted to change her eyes, her mouth, her smile, I have the ability to take a reference photo and then change that expression, and AI will generate a new image based on that information. So those are the two kind of the tools I used was Forge, Stable Diffusion, and Comfy UI to get those results. And then I just kind of wanted to touch on when you're working with AI generation, it's important to understand that the results aren't going to be perfect. It's not like a one-to-one translation of your idea. The real skill is like knowing how to make what makes a strong shot, and being able to judge whether an image can be pushed further. And sometimes that means inpainting or refining the expression or pose, or even layering in advanced post-processing techniques like style transfer. But these aren't just fixes, they're creative tools that expand your options and move you closer to your vision. So you're able to, a lot of it's like manipulation, right? Photo manipulation, video manipulation, compositing. And then there's some videos here. And so this was all created with AI, live portrait. And then this was using Kling.
It's like seriously amazing how much more advanced we've gotten in just the last 6 months to
Yes.
6 to 9 months. It's
yes.
amazing.
The technology is moving fast, and there's always new models coming out that are much better at generation, for sure. All right, I'm going to go into the demo here. So the demo, I took the same skills that guided me in film and photography are the ones that are guiding me now. And so AI is just simply a new lens. So in one photo, this was shot by a team of people, and it's fully legal. I can use this image, and we own this image. So I took this image, and then there's also a green screen image. Same thing here. We own the image and stuff. So I'm going to combine these two in AI. And I'm going to kind of show you my process here. So in Photoshop, I just quickly created a first frame of Mudana, composited on the lake. And then as the second frame, I used generative fill. So I just quickly selected an area of where I wanted it and said generate fill, and said lake wave and generate, and that's what was created, was a nice little wave for the lake. And then I composited a second frame of Mudana into the frame. Then in Kling, I took the first frame of Mudana skiing, and then the second frame of Mudana skiing. I then added a prompt and hit generate. And here's kind of one of the best, it took a couple times, but here's one of the best generations. And I only need 5 seconds of this because this is just a 5-second clip that's helping tell the story of a bigger production. So I used 5 seconds of this. And yeah, I think it turned out great, the end video. So that was just kind of a simple process of how I combined 2 evergreen or 2 elements that were sourced ethically and legally to use an AI and to create a new visual effects workflow.
It was very cool.
Thanks. All right, and then finally, I wanted to touch on something. I wanted to touch about data collection and ethics. So we kind of talked about this earlier. So implementing transparent data sourcing policies is critical to avoid potential copyright claims. Always read and understand licensing agreements before using AI-generated assets commercially. So you'll want to look at Civita and read through their policies and their licensing agreements. You'll want to look through Midjourney. What are their policies? And you want to just make sure that they align with your company goals or with the privacy goals or the transparency goals that you put in place. And then choose AI tools that prioritize privacy and data security, and just avoid platforms with vague policies. That will definitely help with adoption. I think a lot of companies are worried about their data getting out and training the models, but there are tools out there that prioritize that. And so here is an example shoot that I did for a LoRa shoot. And so this is data collection on a talent. They're, ethically sourced, and she signed a contract. And so basically we're able to take her, and then to get reliable results, I had to think like a creative director and a data strategist and show the full range of expressions and poses and lighting and angles. And this information will then be captioned, and there'll be descriptions added. And so the AI can understand the context of the photo, and then just have to be the metadata had to be consistent and tailored to the creative goal. And then if there was any any type of clothing or wardrobe item that needed to stay the same, it has to be clearly and repeatedly shown in the data set if you're going to use it.
So just to clarify a little bit, because this is not my world, but I'm assuming then each of those different expressions and each image that you take, that all becomes the data that you're training on, so that it can generate it better because it has all that context.
That's right. Yeah. So it's all about context, versus instead of going and sourcing a pose from the internet or an expression from the internet, or using someone from the internet or wherever you're sourcing the information. Yeah, you're using you're using this data and it can be used over again. So, if I needed a shot of her laughing, like of this person laughing, or just a reference of someone laughing, now I have that reference and I can now use it. And you can use, and then with AI, you can use, you can I would use her likeness, but not to the point of where it's exactly who she is. So I would maintain, I'm using her data to create not a one-to-one match, but a likeness to where I can get a repeatable, consistent character or a repeatable, consistent expression where the AI is not like trying to figure out what running looks like or sitting on a chair. I have that reference for the AI.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. And then lastly, here's some resources for everyone. I did take a course at Lighthouse Academy, so if you want to check them out, they're on LinkedIn. They're a great group of guys over across the pond in Europe. So, but it's a great source, and they're always coming out with new classes around architecture, how to use AI in architecture, visual effects, strictly comfy UI or classes, or just general video image generation and LM information as well. So they're a good resource.
Thank you so much for sharing with us. I like the reason I wanted you to come and do this was because the things that I've been seeing that you post are just amazing. And I think it's really uh, what you're doing is the next, that's the next level of where everything is going. And so uh, just thank you for like digging in, being willing to like just jump in and figure it out and share with us because I think a lot of people are going to be adopting uh, these practices and these processes, and you're leading the way. So thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, it is a technology that's been around, but I feel like it has accelerated in the last year or two, and it's only gonna get as technology progresses, it's only gonna keep progressing. And a lot of people are talking about it on LinkedIn. Executives are now talking about it. Communities are talking about it. So I think it's important that, to understand that AI is not this scary thing. It's a collaborative tool that helps you get from point A to point B in a more efficient manner and in a more fun manner. If I think a big part of it's a curiosity and um, leaning into the mistakes of AI as well. Like, just because something looks funny doesn't mean it can't be used. Sometimes the funny stuff is the
Sometimes,
best part.
yeah, sometimes that's like exactly what you want.
Yeah. So sometimes there's some good surprises out there.
Let's see. It looks like there's a question in the chat of where I'm assuming where should a beginner start? Like, where would you suggest somebody start their journey?
Yeah, as a beginner, I think a good place to start is Midjourney. I think the tools in Midjourney are pretty straightforward, and you can start like what Midjourney offers is uh, a peek into different styles and different ways of uh, you can create mood boards and then generate images based on those mood boards. So it's a very robust um, platform, and it's fun to use, especially like Midjourney has a feature where you can go back to like 5.2 or like you can go back to the earlier models. And sometimes, depending on the look and feel that you want, going back to an older model like a 5.2 is at like that look and feel is fun to use. And so experimenting with the different models and uh, just experimenting with the different tools. And there's a great community online on Discord that will help you through it. And it's a very open sharing. So you can see what other prompts people are using. You can see what other settings people are using, and you can use those settings and just create new stuff based on what they're doing. So it's very open sourced for learning.
Yeah, there's some really good artists on X that share their SREFs a ton.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
that's always, I go down those rabbit holes very
Yeah.
often. Just like testing out different
Yeah,
SREF
I love
codes.
mixing style references. I love like yeah, Midjourney is fun. Like you can mix and match, you can add references. It's a fun platform to play around in.
I had a question. To what extent did you feel held back or by the hardware side of things, like your computer graphics card or other solutions to get things done? Like the AI has to do calculations and it's all very time consuming or processor intensive.
Yeah, I did buy a PC. I initially downloaded an earlier version of Stable Diffusion because you can download it for free, and that worked fine. But then, as soon as I started getting into LLMs and Comfy UI, that's kind of when things started getting. When I noticed my hardware slipping, and I was like, "Oh, I really need to upgrade my VRAM. I really need to upgrade my memory. Um, things need to be a little faster." And so at that point, that's kind of when I went to Run Comfy or Think Diffusion, where it's more of like an online service where you pay for, I don't know, like a
You're paying for the processing.
you're paying for the computer on the other end.
Yeah.
So basically it's all set up in there, and then yeah, you're just paying for the use of the web browser, their services and stuff. And that seemed to, instead of consistently always having to update my system, like my hardware system at home, I just found that it was easier to jump into these pay per hour, pay per minute or whatever systems, just to get in and get what I needed to get done and then get out of there. And I'm not using Comfy UI every day, and I'm not generating images every day. So it's kind of where, I guess, depending on where you're at in your career and where you want to go with it, investing in that hardware may not be the best option, but instead maybe just investing in these online platforms instead. But it is good to understand the process of downloading Stable Diffusion on your PC and understanding how to download the Comfy UI and setting that up on your PC. It's good to understand that. It's good to understand how to download a large language model, like using anything LLM, just playing around with understanding how the free resources work before, I guess, moving into the more platform based ones. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, Julian, are you using AI with any of your processes, Julian?
Me? Not at the moment. I'm now working on the post-production of AI generated images, which is a whole different story.
That's a whole thing in itself.
Well, it is, and it is, and Steph knows these processes. So, you need to take it into account, what you want to achieve when you generate it. That is the one thing I can say about it. If you want to make something, that you try and generate something that is as close as possible to where you think you will want to have it. Because what comes out of AI, doesn't matter how you generate it, is technically, let's say, a light version of an image. There's not a lot that you can do with it technically. There's not a lot of data inside the file. So if you want to change colors completely, or make light very dark or dark very light and stuff like that, you're gonna get into trouble. It's not gonna work very nicely.
It'll kind of devolve quickly.
Yeah, images break up and yeah, start deteriorating very quickly.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense. I like to, I know Steph, you said this too, like making sure that your data and that your everything is aligned with your intended outcomes. I think that's kind of what you're saying, is make sure you know what you want the end process to
Yep.
look like before you
absolutely.
even start. So that's a good tip.
Yeah, and it's a learning process too. I mean, I think with anything, like when you're learning to shoot on a new camera, or or using AI, like it's a process of like learning like how, like what works and what doesn't work and what could be better. And
Well,
Awesome.
as Steph already said, AI is certainly not the solution to everything. So you have to make
Right.
choices where you use that. And she's shown very clearly, very briefly now,
Yeah.
how she did that.
Yeah. It's not going to save the world, but it might help us make
Just a
things
tiny
better.
bit.
it might, yeah.
Mm.
um, but yeah, just thank you so much for sharing with us. And if anybody needs anything or has questions after this, how might they get a hold of you or connect with you, Steph?
Yeah, if you want to find me on LinkedIn, I'm Steph Gornick on LinkedIn. Otherwise, you can find me at stephaniegornick.com. I'm also on Discord at Calgon Take Me Away.
I love that. All right. Well, I hope everybody has a good evening, and thank you again.
Thank you so much.